First thing we're going to show here on the DSS V6 is how I set it up. And then we'll go ahead and look at the VMware ESX, how we're able to connect to the targets. So what you're seeing here on the DSS V6 is I have an iSCSI volume right here, blocked IO, and I've created a 50 gig volume, and this is where the ESX is going to connect to, and of course is where I have my virtual machine on. And I'm replicating, by the way, at the same time. Underneath it, I just have another Nass volume. That's where I create my ISO images. And then, of course, this iSCSI volume that's in a block IO is for Microsoft, where I have my Windows 2008 server connected to it. And then that's where I'm going to copy some of the virtual machines using the vmProtect 6 from Acronis. Then, of course, I created another option here, a Nass volume, where I can also create backup copies to my Nass. So kind of what I'm showing here is that you can use a lot of the usage of the Acronis to back up to a Nass and iSCSI volume. So if you wanted to replicate the data from, let's say, using a WAN data replication from the Nass, you can do so. It's kind of a neat feature when you're adding this, because the backup process is pretty interesting how it works with the Acronis vmProtect 6 with the DSS V6. Sorry, with all the names and the sixes, it just happens to coincide with all each other. I think it all just got lucky how the names came to the same. Okay, so let's take a look. I basically just created my Nass volume and my iSCSI volume. Let me just show you the iSCSI volume. I have two iSCSI targets I created. One is for the VMware. Here I've set it up, just regular basic, just 1.0. Simple. I'm using replication, so I'm not going to be using the write back because we're not replicating the cache. So that's more information if you want to verify. Here's my 50 gig that I'm giving to the VMware initiative. Now here I've named my target backups, and if we look at backups, I did enable the write back functionality, so for performance reasons. So here I've named it backups, and now let's go to the configuration of the Nass. So I created two Nass shares. One is the most important. It's called backups, and this is going to be the one where I created for this logical volume of 100 gig. It's here you see LV0003, and I named it backups. And I just did something very simple. Just put my name in there and a password, and I guess anyone without password as well. At this point, I'm pretty much ready to go, so let's go ahead let's take a look at VMware. So if we look at the VMware, I have my initiator set. Basically, just to go over it so everybody understands, I went ahead and used my dynamic discovery, entered my IP address, which is my DSS V6 server. And here's my 50 gig. And then, of course, on my storage, you'll see that I have the 50 gig right here that I have for my virtual machine, which we have over here on the left, Ubuntu. Now, Ubuntu is running. Okay, so right now I'm just going on the website of our website, and here you can see it running. I'm looking at things. I'm able to use some of the functions here, running naturally, just as if anything. So what we're going to demonstrate is now while we're running with the virtual machine running, I don't have to stop anything. Let's go ahead and use the vmProtect 6. Let's go ahead and bring it up. The vmProtect 6 is web-based. So once you install it, it allows you to run from a Windows 2008 system or 2003. I will tell you that we did have some issues installing it in the beginning, and the reason what we found out is we kept on getting these port errors, and we thought it was NFS. Actually, what it was that we had Sans Server, because we had QLogic HBA in the Windows 2008 server, so we had a very difficult time installing it. We couldn't figure out, and the knowledge base wasn't there, but we found out that the Sans Server has a port that the VMware Protect needs. And of course, once we uninstalled Sans Server, it worked. We did try to disable the services. That didn't work. Tried to disable all functionality of the Sans Server. For some reason, we had to uninstall it. uninstall it. And then once we did that, we were able to install VMware Protect 6. So actually, that was the most difficult part of the whole process here. What we did then is, once we configured, we got right into the software here, we figured out, we went into the ESX host, and we added it. Pretty much all you're doing is presenting the IP address of the ESX host. So if you're trying to define, well, what is it, the VM kernel, or is it the IP address that you configure? Well, basically, it's the ESX IP address. So here you see 192.168.1.230. That's what you want to enter. You don't want to enter the, let's say, the VM kernel. You want to be able to go to the service console. So here's what I have when you enter on the vmProtect 6. So you want to make sure you add the IP address, and if you look, we'll put that in here. Mouse 1.230. Then you would put the password here. I just add the username, and I put password. And you can verify your test connection very simply, and it states that it's successful. Once you've connected to your ESX server, at this point, you're ready to start doing your backups. So let's take a look at it. If we go back to the actions, and really there's nothing else really to configure. It's very simple. I kind of like it, and it's not a very expensive product, but it really functions well for creating backups, and then from here you can replicate it any way you want. If we go to click right on backups, you'll see that the selected virtual machines, if we click on the plus sign here, and here we see the Ubuntu. At this point, you want to be able to click on it and select it for the selected backups. Obviously, we can have more virtual machines to back up, so there's a lot of choices you can add into more of the virtual machines. Now we just click on the next button. There we go. All right. Now, when we first looked at this, we said, well, let's just see if we can do with Nass first. And so we created that share, if you remember, in backups in the DSS V6. So what we did was we went to browse. But what we found out is when you start clicking on the local folders, it's no problem. Because drive D I created, that's my initiator. Remember, we created a 100 gig volume for the Microsoft server. But then we went to network folders. It takes a lot of time to search for the DSS V6. But once it does this, it's going to look for the DSS V6. You're going to go into the network services, and then it's going to ask you for the username and password. So here it sees the work group, and again, it takes time. It cycles through. It's doing a search on the network. So what we've done is we created a mapped drive, and for the DSS V6, for that Nass share that we created called backups. So just to kind of quicken things up here, we'll let that cycle through, is here we went to recent locations. So that can save you time into sort of letting it cycle through. Now drive D is my iSCSI volume on the 2008 server that matches this drive D. And of course, this is my share where you have DSS-1 backups. So going back to what we stated before is we wanted to do Nass. That way, if we wanted to do data replication or if we wanted to back up to using the DSS built-in backup functionality, we could back up to tape, you could back up to a dynamic unit, a USB drive. So that's why we wanted to show different ways to back up with the vmProtect 6 with DSS V6. So here you can see that it picked up the DSS1, and here you would enter the username, which we created, Todd, and of course you can have anything, and then put your password in, and then go ahead, and it'll create the archive name. So what we've done here, let's just go ahead and try this. So we'll put the Todd, and then we'll put password. And we'll log on, and there it populates the shares. So we'll select backups. In here we have archive, and we'll say OK. And now we go to next. Now their scheduling is really simple. For this purpose, we're going to do do not schedule, just run on demand. But you can see where you can have many different variables set for Monday through all the days of the weeks. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Fridays. You can probably do your weekends and your weekday backups. You could schedule them at different time values, every minutes and time values of how many times at once. So for this purpose, we'll just go right through to run the schedule on demand. Now we scroll down and we look for these options here. The retention rules, or keep it as a single file for all backups. You can do simple cleanup schemes. What we found out was to validate the backup, I think, is important, though it does take more time. But then we went to more options. And this is where we found out was really interesting and simple. Obviously, you can do compression, which we looked at, and of course we tested that, and it does take, when you do higher compressions, it does create a smaller backup size, but the backup process can take longer. So we really don't want to do that. And so we just left it at normal. We found out that it was fine. The notifications are great to have for email sending and simple network management protocol as well. This is where it was really interesting. The dedupe functionality and the change block tracking, which really was interesting for us. And I think that the dedupe is that if they're the same size or the same no changes in the backup archives that are in the same location. This is where the deduplication speeds up the performance and saves space. What's really interesting is I think that their help is really good too. So if you click on help, you get a lot of information about their compression levels, their error handlings, email notifications, and of course their explanations about deduplication and the change block tracking feature that they have here. So let's go ahead and just take the defaults, and we'll just go ahead and save and run. Immediately it comes up and it starts, at first you're thinking, well, is it really running? Well, we waited for a few seconds, and we'll just go ahead and show this, that it actually is running. You just give it a second and it jumps right up to 8%. I think what it's doing is just compiling, it's logging on, it's doing to the VMware ESX server, it's looking, and now we start beginning. So it happens pretty relatively quick for what we have here. And then you'll see on the right where your source is going to. You see that we're going to the 230. That's our source for the virtual machine. Where its target destination, where the archive is being stored, the backup. So here we have DSS V6 on DSS1 on the share backups. And of course, the different values for, as we left, the default values. And that's pretty much it for when you do the backup. So right now I'm just showing you the Nass, and then we'll look at the Nass share once that completes, because it's going to take a few minutes. But at the same time, what we can be doing is we could do a backup using for the iSCSI. So for Microsoft, what I did is I went into the control panel and I went right into the iSCSI initiator. So here on the iSCSI initiator, let's bring this up over here. Obviously, a lot of you know how to connect to a target, but just for your information, I just entered the IP address of the DSS V6. That was the .220. So here you can see the IP address. It defaults to the same port, 3260. And nothing really that's special here. But once you log on to your target, then at that point, I was able to go into the disk manager. And at disk manager, I saw my 100 gig iSCSI target, connected it, formatted it, and now I have my drive D. So we're going to back up to that, because the reason why I wanted to show that you can throw it onto an iSCSI drive as well is that you may want to replicate that again. In case you only have one DSS V6, you're not using the auto failover, or maybe you want to replicate that differently at a different time value, and so you don't want to use the auto failover on your backups. You just want to keep it there and hold it. And you may also be backing up directly from the Microsoft server, so there's another reason why you use it, your iSCSI volume, to bring it in with Microsoft. Let's bring this down, and let's go ahead and run a backup And mind you, we're still at the same time, VMware is still running the virtual machine while it's backing up. And now let's go back to the Acronis, and let's go to our backup function. So really, it's really only 4 simple steps. Here we see the virtual machine. We'll add it to the selected groups for the backup. We'll click on Next. And here we'll browse to where we want to store the backup. If we go to Local Folders, and Drive D is my iSCSI target to the DSS V6, we specify the archive name. You can change different naming. Here we're just going to not run a schedule. We're going to go ahead and do it on demand. We're going to leave the defaults. This time I'm not going to do a verify after backup. This way it'll process faster. I'm going to leave my options default end. We're going to save and run. Now at first you're saying, well, why is it not running? We noticed the same thing. Apparently with the iSCSI and you have this running at the same time, it fails. So what we did was we let the Nass finish up because I guess it's too many processes at the same time. So for the iSCSI, we left that alone. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and just, that's why I wanted to point this out, is let your one backup run here on the Nass. It goes fairly pretty quickly for what we're doing. Now what we're going to do is we're going to try to do a restore. So this one, which is also one we did previously, and we were testing it about an hour ago, and we're going to restore. And what's cool about this is that you can restore over the existing virtual machine, or you can create another virtual machine, but it'll have a different naming, close to the naming convention. Let's go back to Actions. Then let's go to Restore. And here we have a restore point that was about an hour ago that we talked about. So this is coming from the Nass. So here we're going to apply it. We're going to select our resources. So we have our selected virtual machine. We're going to go to Next. Now here is where we want to select the original location. You can also restore to a different IP address or a different ESX server. We didn't have one to test, but it looks like you have different ESX servers that you can restore to. So now then what we want to do is we're not going to go ahead and validate the backups for recovery. Let's look at the more options that we have here. You still have the same ones: email notifications, SNMP, error handling capabilities, power off targets for virtual machines, restarting them, power on the targets virtual machines when recovery is finished, and of course you have your additional settings, FTP. We didn't play around with this, so we just went ahead and just took the defaults. So again, this is going to take a few seconds, and of course we're still running the backup on the Nass side, which we should probably let run finish. But what we want to show is that are the files backing up to there. So let's take a look, and I'm going to show you what the structure looks like. So here's our DSS server. Here's our share that's called backups. And here you can see that the files that it's creating. So you can see that they're about a pretty large, 1 gig size, and we're restoring from these that took place. So this is the one that we're restoring from that was about an hour ago. So now again, the backup succeeded on the other ones, but our restore failed due to again. So let's try it again, because we had some difficulties sometimes with this, but let's see if we can do it again. So we're going to run. And then we can look at the logs and see what happened. Group restored failed, information. So this is where the fun gets on troubleshooting. Let's do this again and try it once more. Let's first do our backup. Let's do it to the iSCSI volume. Let's select local folders. And we'll select next. We'll leave the schedule do not schedule, just run on demand. We'll take the defaults from here. And let's give it a second and see what happens. Now we know we don't have any errors. Let's look at the DSS to make sure. Our status and connections. So we see that the Windows connected to the share. And here we see both the Microsoft and the VMware are connected fine. So we're not having any errors on from the DSS side. Let's go back to the vmProtect 6. And it failed again. So let's try to troubleshoot this and find out why. So we cannot find any disk volumes or volumes to back up. Let's verify on the Microsoft side. Let's see if there's any errors there. Well, we see our drive here that we have. And let's clear the logs. Okay. So let's try back up one more time. Actually, let's check this out. Let's go back to if there's any issues with diagnostics, event viewers. Let's see if there's anything from the Microsoft side. Still not getting anything. So I think that here we got one note, but it looks like it framed. That's not going to help any. I don't think there's anything in here. Our connections look fine. So let's see what's going on with the vmProtect 6. So let's go ahead and let's try to run back up fresh again. Select our virtual machine. Select our location. Let's try recent folders. Let's call the archive name -1. And let's go straight to scheduling the backup. Let's go ahead and begin. And let's see if it fails again. So we've had successful backups, okay? And then we find out that it's backing up right now at 8%. So I'm not sure why it failed before. So that's interesting. You can probably take a look at it later on. Up there goes fails again. Interesting. Sometimes it happens, but interesting how we're not able. So let's take a look at the ESX. Maybe something's going on there. So if we look, we see our data store. See, it's fine. So we're okay there. And let's go back to the Acronis. So I'll tell you what we'll do is we'll remove all the tasks and we'll start fresh. Maybe something's going on. Let's remove the ESX server. And the tasks. Okay. So now what we'll do is we'll start brand new. Add our host. Put our username. Test our connection. It's good. Okay, so now we're connected. Let's go back to our actions. Do our backup. Select our virtual machine. Go to next. Looks like somebody said, thanks guys, for maybe help troubleshoot this. We don't know why. We had successful backup, so we're troubleshooting right now why it won't. Somebody's saying, kill the task and remove the task. All right, I thought we did that. Let's check that out. Previous tasks. So here, we'll delete them. Let's delete them all. That would be bad if we have to do that in order to make this work. Not good. Well, let's find out if that's the case. So thanks, guys, for jumping in and troubleshooting. It's part of what they are. These are live. There's nothing that's recorded on these. We kind of make them live so that way we get real life scenarios. All right, so let's do it again. Here we got our virtual machine. Let's go to our browse. We'll go recent locations. We'll select our target, just so that way we do a different naming convention. Okay, we'll select just regular schedule. No schedule at all. Let's bring it on and save and run it. Let's see what happens. So we should see like the first 8% coming right up in any session. So we know we got our source, target, and there it failed again. Interesting. Very interesting. So let's try this. If VMware, let's do this. Let's go ahead and, curious because we should be able to do this right on the fly. I don't have any errors on the VMware. Service cost running. Let's start. That's interesting. The VMware, the virtual machine was running before, so maybe that's it. What happened on the instance of the virtual machine being gone? It's very interesting. Tell you what, here's what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and create another virtual machine real quick. Okay, first what we got to do is we got to go ahead and get on this guy's, for some reason he was lost. Let's go ahead and enable our NFS and remount it. Because I think that's what was the cause. Somehow, which is very interesting, we knew that the virtual machine was running, And then when we did a restore, we told it to restore to a different one and it overrode it and corrupted it. So it's a good lesson learned that I don't want everybody else to be doing that. So let's try to figure out how we do that right. We've done it before and I'm surprised that it didn't. It did that this time. Interesting. Let's get this, okay, sometimes let's get this guy, make sure that NFS is running. Let's go back to NFS on the share. Yeah, we've got that running. Let's verify it on the data share. Go back to VMware. Let's add our storage. There we go. All right, let's go ahead and create a virtual machine. We'll take the defaults, we'll edit it. And we'll select our ISO. There's Ubuntu. We're going to connect the power on. I think that should be good enough. Let's go to Ubuntu 1 and let's fire it off. Look at the service console. And at the same time on this one, totally corrupted. Interesting. Let's try to do a restore from previous one. Let this run and see if we can back it up. So actions, restore. Okay, if we take, let's look at our, there's nothing in D drive. Here we have one that was a while back ago. So let's try to see if we can restore from that one. We should be able to. So recent locations, backups. And this one was about an hour ago. Now what we're going to do is we'll tell it to on 230 and we're going to say create virtual machines with different names. Let's do that. And we're going to select the iSCSI. And let's just go ahead and run it right now and see what happens. And let's go back to the VMware while that's running. And it looks like we have, let's just install the Ubuntu real quick. Now look, it's on the left, it looks like it's doing a restore up here. Let that install. Go back to the Acronis. So it looks like it is restoring. Very interesting though how we just have to continue with this. Go ahead and install this one. And then what we'll do is we'll check on the Acronis to see what percent value it's at now. Now, it could have been something that maybe did it accidentally, but even so, it shouldn't have done that. So want to make sure that we're doing this right in front of everybody. We've worked on this before and we didn't have this issue. DSS was fine. The VMware looked fine. I think it had something to do with their setting that is different. So you might want to really practice this before you actually put it in process. I mean, the cost of the Acronis vmProtect 6 is very minimal for what it does. I mean, it's very inexpensive in what you can do. Just making sure that you don't do exactly what we're showing you here. So we're going to let that go ahead and finish. And let's go take a look at our Acronis. So we're at 78%. So let's see if our restore pointer actually worked. And then let's see if we can back up that restore once more. So we're at 86%. Let's go back on our virtual machine to the other one we created, Ubuntu-1. It's almost completed here. And we're at 91%. There it is, succeeded. So let's check it out. So here's the one that it created. Let's power on the virtual machine. And while that's powering up, let's look at our other virtual machine that we have running on here that we're installing. And that's up and running. And let's go back to our restored virtual machine. Look at that, it works. Interesting. So it also retained my automatic login. So let's go ahead and let's see if we can go on to the internet. Let's try to back that up. Oh, and it restored back with my last search engine. So that's great. So that worked. But this virtual machine, for some reason, was corrupted. So actually, as long as you have your backup working, then you can restore. So very interesting that this all worked out like it is. It's live. So actually, if I were to lose my virtual machine and I have a good restore point, you can see how quick we can restore from the Acronis. So once more, I'm going to try to do a backup. Let's see what happens, and then we'll pretty much end the show at this point. But let's do a backup. Let's select our virtual machine, the one that we just created. Let me verify that we are up and running. We are. Okay, it's still running, so we'll let that be. Let's back up to this guy right here, the Ubuntu _ the today's date. So let's back that up. This one. Let's back it up to our iSCSI folder. And let's run. And we won't do a verify after backup. And let's save and run and see what happens. We'll give that a second and let's go back to our VMware. We know we're running it. Let's go ahead and make some actions and searches on it on the VMware, see what's going on here, see if we can go ahead and work on it live while it's doing the backup. And let's go back to the Acronis. So we're at 8%. So we noticed that it failed right after 8% before, but it looks like it might be running. We'll give it a few more seconds here. this virtual machine is completely running with that backup. So it's hanging at the 8%. Let's see what happens. We got our source right. That's what we're backing up on. We're backing up our virtual machine, and we're backing it up to drive D, which is our iSCSI target from DSS V6. We just took the regular defaults, and everything should be fine right here. So what could be going on? It's fine. It says last result, not running. Meaning time is 3 minutes. So let's be interested to find out what happens. Meantime, let's go back to the VMware. And we've already reinstalled our new virtual machine. And we'll restart that because I want to do another test. I want to do another backup at the same time. So the restore was pretty quick. If we look at the succeeded time rate and the values, it looks like, let's go back to the logs. Looks like it took 5 minutes and 3 seconds to restore, which is not bad. What's interesting is this is taking really a long time. I have no idea why. And it looks like we've only transmitted 21 megs, so I have no idea why it's taking such a long time. We'll try to do one more backup and then we'll end it because I'm just curious. Oh, we just made a jump. Here we go, 14%. But the speed is real low. So I wonder if that's where our delay is at. And no, we're running at 1 gig. So because the this 2008 system is running at 1 gig E. You can verify that. So we're at 1 gig. So that's not the problem. You know, the DSS V6 is running at 1 gig. So I wonder if it's just that the speed of the backup or maybe the process on the VMware could be slow. Could be interesting. Oh, I didn't remove the installation. So let's go ahead and power that off. We got to take the CD, disconnect that, and then we can restart it. There we go. Now it's booting. So going back to this, guys, that we're backing him up, and then while we boot this other Ubuntu under -1, that one that we just installed, a new one, we're going to try to do one more backup with that. So it looks like it's running successfully now. That's great. So that means that we were backing it. We're backed up to the Nass share. We backed up to an iSCSI target. It failed, but when we did a restore, it overwrote the existing first Ubuntu here, which actually corrupted it. Then what we did is we did a restored from one that we did an hour ago, and it retained all the settings. Then as we create a new one, as it comes up, we can go ahead and use vmProtect 6. So we record on the backup and we can restore. So it looks like it all worked. It was just a weird setting that maybe we could have jumped a little too fast, but the process is very simple, as you can see when you restore. So it's not complicated. So I'm not sure what happened. Again, when you do the backup, you select your you do the restore, we select the restore points. And so from the backup on drive D, it's not done yet, but when it's done, we can restore from the iSCSI or we can restore from the Nass. So here we have one that was 32 minutes ago and one 1 hour ago. So that's where we selected the 1 hour. We then selected the location or archive in the window. So we selected our Ubuntu virtual machine. Then we went to next. We specified, the IP address. We can overwrite, but what we did is we created with different names, and that's how we were able to restore. So at that point, we selected the data store that we wanted to use, which is the iSCSI DSS V6, and then of course we hit next and run now. And that will run, and it looks like the other backup completed, so that one's done, and then our restore succeeded as well, and here we're restoring from another one. Alright, looks like everything worked, so it was an interesting troubleshooting session at the end here. So thanks everybody for bringing out your points and thoughts, trying to help me guide me through. I read some of your text. I just was trying to figure out basically where to go from on a live scenario, what to do when you lost a virtual machine. There's another question in that's coming in. Says, can this be used in a disaster recovery scenario with no data loss on a restore? Yeah, I think it can. I mean, first of all, what I would do is I'd be using the replication in DSS V6 first. So if we look here, the first thing I'm going to do is, if you look at my volume replication, I'm going to enable this data store, which is the VMware where it's connected to. I'm going to use a replication for that, use our auto failover. So if you've got, let's say this could be 2 terabytes or many of these, and you can replicate it, many replicated iSCSI volumes. So you can have this replicated, this volume. If I wanted to change that to be replicated, I can. And then I could replicate that to another location. Just remember we use replication with our volume replication to make sure you have a high ISP pipe size, because then you're only writing to, it's an old saying, you're only as fast as your slowest link. So you want to make sure you have something of, a good T3, a 45 meg pipe, or you could have probably you could get away with a 10 meg, but I probably wouldn't go any lower. But what you can do is, let's say you're doing the vmProtect, and you want to be able to go and take these files that are on the Nass share and use the data replication that's built in with DSS. So you can replicate it to, let's say, another site location, and that's done asynchronously. So you would be able to use our data replication. To enable that, it's very simple. You just go to the configuration NAS, scroll all the way down to the bottom here, and select Enable Data Replication Agent. Once you do this, then and this can be done with another Linux system. So it's using rsync. So if you have a Linux server that wants to be able to replicate, or you want to replicate these files to that Linux server, and this being the source, you can do that. So for disaster recovery purposes, you're absolutely right. This is what you should be doing. So in case you don't have a single point of failure. So for these backups, where the backups for the virtual machines are residing on in this share, if we look here, you can see where the backups are for the vmProtect. Then on the bottom, let's say your remote DSS V6 server, you would enable it and use the data replication to replicate those backup files. I know that vmProtect 6 is coming out with a built-in replication as well. So that's coming in the near future for them. Well, let's see if we succeeded. Yep, so our restore succeeded, our backup succeeded, but our first backup failed, and looks like it just, for some reason, I don't know why, it just didn't fail, but here it brought in and built the next one. So it restored that one again. So if we look at it, go on console, it will start right up, and there you go. So I think that is interesting how this all worked out, and I hope you all learned as well as much as we did. Like I said, the hardest part for us was trying to install it because we couldn't figure out, it was complaining about port 9999 not available, and then we started researching that it was an NFS issue, and we enabled that for Microsoft. That had nothing to do with it. It was actually just the whole thing of the SAN server.